So, hey everyone, I am Maddie, 29 years old, the middle daughter of a family that operates on emotions the way a theme park rides operate on faulty hydraulics. I grew up between two sisters who somehow absorbed all the spotlight, attention, and oxygen in the house, while I was left holding the family together with the personality of someone who learned to file tax forms before graduation. My oldest sister, Amber, is 34. She was the golden child from the moment she arrived on Earth with her glittery baby blanket and her ridiculous ability to bat her eyelashes at mom and dad until they treated her like a celebrity on tour. Then came Kayla, 31, the cute surprise baby who never got in trouble even when she once tried to microwave a spoon because she thought it would turn shiny. And then there was me, the child who mom and dad consistently remembered only after they remembered the trash needed to be taken out. I was the responsible one. I was the designated adult before I even had a driver's license. Growing up, Amber was the one who had dance recitals, special projects, and endless activities that somehow required the entire family's energy. Kayla was the one everyone thought was adorable even when she asked whether chickens were mammals because her friend told her they had tiny arms. And I was the child who quietly handled everything behind the scenes. I filled out my own school forms, scheduled my own dentist appointments, figured out how to manage money, learned how to work early, and eventually helped pay household bills when dad's hours got cut. I was the one who kept things together when mom was stressed and dad was exhausted. When the roof leaked, I dealt with it. When the car needed insurance deadlines met, I handled it. Amber did not know the difference between a W-2 and a shoe size. Kayla once asked me if you washed grapes before or after cooking them. Meanwhile, I was the human safety net. Fast forward to adulthood. Amber now has one child, Jackson, 5 years old, a boy who screams like a fire alarm with a grudge. Kayla has a daughter named Millie, 3 years old, who looks adorable until she hits you with her plastic tiara as if you owe her tribute for entering her royal space. I love my niece and nephew. They are great in small doses. But my sisters act as if the moment they had children, they were promoted to a higher tax bracket where everyone around them has to financially submit. Suddenly, everything they do is expensive. Suddenly, every fundraiser, every snack, every outing is a shared burden because, as they say, family supports family. They treat having children like they discovered a magical government loophole. They have even said things like, I have more money because I do not have kids. They act as if motherhood turned them into the Internal Revenue Service, and I am supposed to happily donate to their parenting expenses. At one point, I almost joked, come on, Karl, having a child does not make you the Internal Revenue Service, but truly, that kind of humor would go right over their heads and land in the compost bin with their logic. This has been a pattern for years. Amber asks for help with every preschool fundraiser because apparently Jackson needs premium colored pencils that cost more than rent. Kayla asks for a little help here and there because raising a child is hard. And to quote her, I do not understand real responsibility, which is shocking coming from someone who once thought her car insurance payment was optional because she had already paid it one time the year before. Every time they said they would pay me back, it turned into an emotional monologue about how difficult motherhood is. Every time they wanted me to babysit, it was assumed I had nothing important going on because I do not have children. I have covered bills, babysat last minute, driven across town to help with errands, and bought fundraiser items I did not need or want. Every holiday meal seemed to include a conversation about how being a mother meant they deserved grace, money, patience, and applause. Meanwhile, I quietly continued holding everything together without ever asking for anything. The most recent incident happened last weekend for Mom's birthday. We all went out to a big, noisy restaurant that looked like it was designed to host children's chaos. Crayons were flying like confetti. Jackson was dramatically rejecting his seat because he claimed it smelled like sadness. And Millie was insisting that she only wanted apple juice served in a fancy glass because she saw one in a cartoon. Their orders alone could have fed a small marching band. Amber insisted Jackson needed the specialty pancakes because the standard ones were not inspiring him. Kayla let Millie add every possible side dish because telling her no might ruin the evening. The bill kept climbing in real time like a stock chart during a market surge. When the waitress set the final bill down, it came to $248 before tax and tip. I knew immediately that half of that was because of the tiny humans who had eaten approximately 6 bites each. Without hesitation, Amber announced that we would split the bill 3 ways. Kayla nodded, as though she had just approved a corporate merger. I stared at both of them. I truly thought they were joking. These were the same sisters who consistently reminded me that motherhood was financially draining. Yet here they were, insisting that I pay 1/3 of a bill that included 2 children who ordered like they were on vacation in France. I calmly said that I would be paying for myself and for mom. That was it. I said I would not be covering their children's meals. Amber looked at me as if I had just confessed to burning down the family home. She said that I was being selfish and that I should remember we were family. Kayla chimed in and said that splitting equally was easier, and that since I do not have kids, I know they struggle more. I almost laughed because I have spent my entire life covering emergencies, paying bills, solving problems, and supporting the family while they contributed mostly stress and noise. I reminded them that having children was their choice and that paying for their kids was not my responsibility. Amber muttered something under her breath about me being selfish. Kayla said I did not understand real adulthood. This is coming from someone who once called me in a panic because she got a letter saying her registration renewal was due, and she thought it was optional because she renewed her registration once when she first bought her car. They stared at me as if refusing to split the bill evenly made me a villain in the family narrative. I stood firm. I paid my portion plus mom's meal, left a generous tip because the waitress deserved hazard pay for surviving that table, and I walked out. I did not lecture them. I did not fight. I simply refused to subsidize expenses that were not mine. Since then, the group chat has erupted. They have written paragraphs insisting that family supports family, that I do not understand the financial burden of parenthood, that I have more disposable income so I should help, and that they always help mom and dad more. That last point is impressive because it is so thoroughly untrue that it feels like they have created an alternate timeline where I did not spend my teenage and early adult years running the household while they were busy being coddled. Now they are telling extended family that I am anti-child because I did not want to pay for their children's restaurant orders. Apparently, refusing to subsidize apple juice in a fancy glass makes me a monster. And now I am sitting here wondering if standing up for myself was somehow wrong, or if I finally hit my limit after years of being treated like the family accountant with no say. So, Ada? Wow, okay, so things escalated like a toddler rolling downhill in a shopping cart, and I genuinely thought that after the restaurant incident, my sisters would simmer down, regroup, and maybe complain about me privately to each other the way they usually do. That is the natural rhythm of our family: chaos, outrage, whining, and then pretending nothing happened, while silently storing resentment in a drawer labeled "to be used later." But this time, they leveled up. Amber showed up at my place completely unannounced. She did that classic Amber move where she knocks once in a polite, performative way and then immediately twists the handle like she owns the deed. Before I could even process what was happening, she walked inside with Jackson glued to her hip like a second, louder limb. Jackson immediately sprinted to my fridge like he was raiding a treasure chest. He grabbed a soda, one I was saving for later, popped it open, and shouted with his tiny gremlin confidence that I do not have kid locks because I do not have a real family. I stared at him the way someone stares at a raccoon that has suddenly appeared in the kitchen. Then I turned to Amber. She shrugged and said that he was just repeating what he heard. That was confirmation that she had been talking about me at home the way people talk about movie villains. Except I am not the one stealing innocence or causing destruction. I was the one refusing to pay for designer pancakes. Amber planted herself on my couch with the dramatic weight of someone who had rehearsed her speech in the car. She launched into a monologue about how women are supposed to support each other, how her sisters need her, and how one day I will want them to return the favor. She used phrases like emotional responsibility and family unity as if she had just discovered them on a website that teaches people how to manipulate siblings. I listened to her because I wanted to see if she would present any valid point. Spoiler alert, she did not. I eventually told her that if I ever choose to have children someday, I will plan and budget for them instead of expecting my child free sibling to absorb the cost. Her face tightened like I had insulted her entire lineage. She accused me of being cold, controlling, insensitive, and ungrateful. She implied that I needed to learn compassion toward mothers as if compassion is synonymous with financial sponsorship. I told her that compassion does not mean paying for someone else's pancakes just because they felt entitled to order everything on the menu. That sentence hit her like a slap made of logic and inconvenience. She stood up with theatrical indignation, dragged Jackson with her, and slammed the door so hard that my wall decor rattled. As she left, Jackson yelled that I was mean, and I shouted back that he should hydrate because the soda he stole from my fridge tastes like sadness. I am pretty sure he did not understand the comeback, but it made me feel better in my own kitchen. Later that night, Mom called with the exhausted voice of someone who has been emotionally refereeing since the early 1990s. She told me she thinks the girls are overreacting, but then added that she wished I had just let it go for her birthday. That sentence told me everything. That was her version of wanting peace at any cost. Mom has always been the quiet middle ground, the one trying to soothe chaos instead of confronting it, and I love her for it. But her gentle suggestion that I should have backed down did not sit right with me. I told her calmly that this is not about a birthday dinner. This is about a boundary that my sisters have been stomping on for years. This is about me refusing to play the role of the family financial cushion while they justify everything with motherhood. Since then, Kayla has been sending passive aggressive messages in the group chat about sisterhood and how children teach patience and empathy. She sent a picture of Millie sitting at a table with big eyes, captioned with the implication that I hurt her feelings. I know for a fact Millie was not hurt. She was probably busy planning her next tiara assault. Extended family has now heard a version of the story where I told my sisters I refuse to support them because I hate children. According to the phone grapevine, I am now an icy, selfish aunt who does not understand the meaning of family. It is impressive how quickly people rewrite events when they have an emotional agenda. But here is the thing. The more they push, the more I realize how necessary this boundary is. For years, I played the responsible one, the solver, the helper, the one who made everything easy for everyone else. And because of that, they grew comfortable. They started assuming I would always take care of things. Now that I'm saying no, they are shocked. They are acting like denial is betrayal. They are acting like independence is cruelty. They are acting like motherhood grants infinite entitlement and that I should fall in line. I am not doing it. I am not signing up to feed their children every time we leave the house. I am not paying for their financial choices. I am not rewarding the belief that the child-free sibling automatically becomes the family sponsor because she is responsible and organized. I am allowed to say no. I am allowed to set limits. I am allowed to expect adults to manage their own lives. And I'm not backing down. So, Kayla invited me over last night for what she described as a calm discussion, which should have been my first warning because calm is not a natural state for my family. I still went, mostly because Kayla is the one who sometimes tries to use reasoning instead of emotional fireworks, and I figured it could not hurt to hear her out. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was that she had set out a plate of homemade cookies, like she was preparing offerings to the goddess of peace treaties. The second thing I noticed was her husband, Eric, sitting at the end of the table with the expression of someone who walked into the wrong meeting and was too polite to back out. His shoulders were stiff, his hands were folded, and his eyes had the subtle panic of a man who was wondering if he was about to become a civilian casualty in a family conflict. I sat down, and Kayla immediately began her performance. She said in this soft, trembling voice that they did not mean to make me feel guilty. The sincerity would have been touching if it were not for the fact that guilt was the entire foundation of their argument for the past week. It was like listening to someone say they did not mean to start a wildfire while holding a box of matches behind their back. She kept pushing the plate of cookies at me as if sugar was going to rewire my sense of fairness. Then she moved into her main point. She said they just thought that since I am single and have a good job, I could help them sometimes. She said it as though she were presenting a reasonable, universal truth, something everyone agrees on, like water being wet. I took a breath and explained that I do help sometimes, that I have helped countless times over the years, but that I am not willing to help all the time in ways that drain hundreds of dollars or reinforce the idea that I am financially responsible for every whim of their children. Kayla stared at me with wide, wounded eyes and said that I make more money than she does, like she was unveiling evidence in a courtroom and expecting the jury to gasp. I looked at her and told her that no amount of money I make obligates me to fund her lifestyle choices, and that income differences do not magically create financial dependency agreements. While I was saying this, Eric nodded so vigorously in silent agreement that I genuinely thought his neck might snap. He looked like a man who had been living with unspoken truths and finally saw someone articulate them out loud. Kayla started crying, real tears, the kind that come from frustration, exhaustion, and emotional overwhelm. She cried and said that being a mom is hard, that she feels stretched thin, that sometimes she just wants someone else to lift the burden for a while. And the thing is, I do know that motherhood is hard. I have never denied that. I have stepped in for years to help, to babysit, to support, to do the things they needed when they genuinely needed them. But I told her that acknowledging her difficulty does not mean I am obligated to become a third parent to her child or an auxiliary income stream. She looked conflicted, torn between defensiveness and understanding. Eric finally spoke, very quietly, and said that they needed to rethink how often they relied on me, because he had been feeling uncomfortable with it too. Kayla looked at him with surprise, but not anger. More like she had not realized he felt that way. That small moment of honesty created a crack in the emotional wall she had built. She wiped her tears and said she never wanted me to feel taken advantage of, and that she thought she was asking for normal family help without realizing how often it was one sided. Then came the almost apology. She said she was sorry if it felt unfair and that she would try to think about it from my side. The wording was not perfect. It was the verbal equivalent of someone handing you a bouquet and accidentally poking your eye with a thorn. But it was more accountability than I had seen from either of my sisters in years. And for the first time since this drama began, I felt like someone in the family actually paused long enough to consider that I might have a point. It is not a grand resolution. It is not a sudden wave of clarity washing over the siblings who have been using my responsibility as a convenient resource their entire lives. But for the first time in this whole saga, someone actually took a step toward balance. It is progress, not major, but present. Small, fragile progress, like a paper bridge. Okay, so here is the plot twist I absolutely did not see coming. Amber apologized. I mean, an actual apology, not a sarcastic one, not a half hearted one wrapped in blame, not a classic Amber apology disguised as a performance for the moral high ground. This was a real, complete apology. She came over looking nervous, which is unusual for her because Amber normally walks into any room like she is about to accept an award for existing. She sat down, took a breath, and said that she should not have put financial pressure on me and that she should not have talked badly about me in front of Jackson. She said she vented because she was stressed and felt like she was drowning financially. She admitted she was jealous that I seemed free. That last part hit harder than anything else she said, because I had never considered that she viewed my life as something enviable rather than simply different from hers. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours. It started tense, but it slowly shifted into something softer, something that felt like we were peeling back layers that had been hardening over years of miscommunication and unspoken resentment. At one point, Amber actually laughed when I joked that if she named her next kid Pancake, then I would pay for their food forever. She said deal with this kind of smile that reminded me of when we were little and used to make ridiculous promises involving stickers and candy and imaginary castles. It was the first time in a while I saw her without that defensive posture she uses whenever she feels overwhelmed. Then, in a moment that honestly surprised me more than the apology, she pulled out a crumpled folder from her bag and said she needed help with her budget. She laid everything out on the table: bills, expenses, overdue notices, scribbled calculations, random sticky notes. She said she had been struggling to organize it and felt ashamed to admit it. She did not try to guilt me into taking over. She did not look at me with expectation. She just said she needed help because she felt lost. And strangely enough, I did not mind helping at all. It felt different from every other time she had leaned on me. There was no manipulation in the air, no emotional pressure, no assumption that I owed her anything. It did not feel like I was being used as the family safety net. It felt like one sister reaching out to another in honesty. We worked through the numbers together. I explained things. She listened. She asked questions without getting defensive. She made notes. She even admitted that she had been avoiding looking at the full picture because it scared her. There was something humbling and humanizing in hearing her say that she felt overwhelmed. It reminded me that while she can be dramatic and entitled and incredibly frustrating, she is still someone who wants to do better for her kid and herself, even if she stumbles along the way. By the time we finished, we were both emotionally drained, but in a good way. Like we had finally cleared out a closet full of old family baggage. That was when we finally talked about boundaries, real ones, not the vague kind that get ignored as soon as someone is stressed. We agreed that automatic equal bill splits were done forever. We agreed that no one should assume the childless sibling has extra money lying around. We agreed that guilt trips were off the table because they poison the relationships we are trying to hold together. We agreed that if the kids order fancy apple juice or specialty pancakes that cost more than a down payment, then Amber will handle it as the responsible adult who chose to bring them into the world. For the first time in a long time, it felt like sisters again instead of a messy mix of obligation, resentment, and financial imbalance. It felt like two adults learning how to communicate without dragging each other into emotional quicksand. It felt like we could build something healthier moving forward instead of repeating the same exhausting cycle. In the end, I think we are going to be okay. I realized I am not the Internal Revenue Service, and I do not need to be the enforcer of everyone else's budgets or the rescuer of every crisis. I am just the sister with slightly better math skills and a spine that finally learned how to stand upright. Thanks for listening, strangers of the internet. You kept me sane.